Ready.
Stand by. Seven, 1, 3.
Fuck!
Damn. Are you good?
Ready.
Stand by. $204. They're in. Barely. $347. Are you ready?
Yep.
Stand by. Stand by.
Fucker.
376. You made it. Ow. 847. You made it.
Ready. Fuck. 4
5,
over.
1, 2.
Hey, welcome to the channel. This is AKs and PBRs showing up again. I've got my ice cold Pabst Blue Ribbon. I'm rocking the Never Too Young for a Vietnam Flashback Hunter S. Thompson t-shirt. Today we will be talking about, you guessed it, not an AK. Today we're talking about a clear rifle, a retro AR-15 build that I have put together. So first and foremost, what's the rifle? The rifle is an Olympic Arms 11.5 with a 4.5-inch pinned and welded moderator style flash hider. This is a pre-ban rifle, pre-assault weapons ban. I don't know what year it was made. However, we have a lot of retro pieces that are on this carbine. So for example, I have a Surefire 660 with the original, 3 lumen flashlight that it comes with. This is an Aimpoint 3000 that is put on the top of the carry handle via a Weaver mount that is marked M16A1-M16A2. Pretty neat. This rifle also has a ready mag on it for your quick and fast reloads. Inside the guts of the gun, I have a LaRue MBT 2-stage trigger, as well as a gas check charging handle from some company I don't remember the name of, but it is large and extended. Why am I talking about this rifle today? Well, somebody who I admire very much, M26 Lemon Grenade, did a video talking about retro rifles and basically why they're dumb. And I wanted to kind of add my story to this. This particular rifle has about 5,000 rounds on it at this point. The story behind this rifle for me is pretty awesome, and this rifle means a lot to me. So many years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I was with my father at a gun show, and my father and I have gone to gun shows since I was in diapers. It's kind of like our thing. We've always had tables. Like we, as a family, him, myself, and my grandfather would always go to gun shows and have tables and, wheel and deal. We'd buy, sell, trade, do that kind of thing with our private collection. So for my birthday, when I was 22 years old, I was looking at a table nearby us that had a pre-ban Olympic Arms 11.5 rifle with a moderator flash hider, bone stock, and I was talking with my father. I'm like, that pre-ban is pretty freaking cool. Like, I can't afford it, but it's a neat piece, and it actually had this standard old sling on it too, and it was all black before then. As you can see, I've spray painted it. The lighting kind of sucks, but I spray painted it green, did some cool things to it. since then. And my father was like, oh yeah, I was looking at that earlier. That is a pretty neat rifle. And so, you know, I went about my day. I was hanging out with some friends during that time for my birthday and so on and so forth. And I showed back up at the gun show in the evening. And my father said, hey, go look in that case. See what's in there for me. I'm like, oh yeah, sure. So I look inside the gun case, and inside the gun case is this pre-band rifle. And he said, happy birthday, son. My father had gotten me a pre-band AR for my 22nd birthday, which meant a lot to me. My father and I are not rich people, and you know, he went out of his way to do that and gift it to me, and that really did mean the world to me. And so, like any young Zoomer, the first thing I did was take it home and spray paint it. It was black for quite a while, honestly, maybe about 2 or 3 months, but I spray painted it green because I'm all about that, you know, paint and gun life. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to use this rifle. At the time, I didn't have any other ARs. I had a lot of Kalashnikov platform rifles, which I still do, and we haven't talked about on this channel for significant reason being that 30 caliber AKs are retardedly hard to feed right now, and it's just not a great time to be a Kalashnikov guy. So that's another reason that we're talking about this. But I digress. That's the story behind the rifle. My father bought it for me when I was 22. Moving on. As time went on, I started to get into like the retro gun game that exists out in the world, and I started to get into some pretty niche things. Originally on this gun, I had a pick rail up here on top of the carry handle that had an Aimpoint Pro mounted on top. And the Aimpoint Pro, I wasn't aware of this, but it has like spacers in it, and you could take those spacers out and make it a low mount and things like that. Aimpoint Pro was on here. I messed around with a couple of different handguard configurations. Originally, I think I had a Knights quad rail up here with a PEC 2 and you know, a Surefire setup like a Scout Light. Over time, I started looking around. I was making connections at the time on Instagram with a bunch of like retro pages, and there was a gentleman whose name I can't remember because I haven't had social media for a while now, but he essentially was selling an upper that had the Aimpoint 3000 and the Surefire 660 on it. And I traded him like an old beat up ACOG for it. So he sent me an upper that had these two attachments on it. I later ended up getting rid of the upper and just keeping the attachments to put them on my own rifle. But it was really nice to get those pieces because these are two things that you can't find very often. And today I wanted to make this video to kind of talk about my experience with this rifle. So about 9 months ago now, maybe 10 months ago, I took this rifle to a class in Pennsylvania with regular guy training. And some of the things I learned about retro ARs have stuck with me to this day. For one, let's talk about the Aimpoint 3000. So the Aimpoint 3000 uses a battery that I will actually pull out of here and show to you and kind of talk about my experience with. If I can get this battery out. This battery is a DL1/3N Duracell battery. It's a 3-volt battery, and it looks kind of like this. It's like a little cylinder, right? This is the battery that the Aimpoint 3000 uses. There was one shop in my entire town that had these batteries, and it was Ace Hardware. I don't know why Ace Hardware had these batteries, but they had about 8 or 9 of them. And when I went to the counter at Ace Hardware, I said, give me all of those batteries that you have. And the lady behind the counter looked at me. She's like, really? You want all of them? I said, yes, give me all of them, because I was planning for this. The Aimpoint 3000 is a pretty neat red dot. I'm not exactly sure what MOA it is. If I had to guess, it would probably be a 4 or a 6 MOA dot. But the battery life on it is extremely short. Extremely short. The battery life lasts 8 hours. That's it. That's all you've got. So while I was shooting this 2,500 to 2,700-ish round class with this setup, this dot died twice in 2 days, which is not optimal if you're doing a lot of shooting or anything of the sort. On top of that, it's mounted via a thumb screw on the carry handle, and this thing is still tight to this day because I used Loctite. But if you don't use Loctite, especially with the kind of janky mount system, these dots have a tendency to shift around and you can lose zero relatively easily. One experience that really saddened me was the first time that I took this rifle out to shoot this setup before I went to the class. I lost the entire mounting bracket for this Surefire 660. That's why it's taped here with some goon tape that I had left over. And the tape is held up incredibly well. It kind of sits in the mount properly, but the piece that actually holds the light to the mount flew off into the nether regions, and I was not able to locate it on the range. So the mount is cooked, but the light still functions and functions well. So during regular guy trainings class, some of the things that I learned about this rifle setup. First and foremost, I would be an idiot if I didn't talk about this, but when I got the rifle, you can see the castle nut is installed properly, and you can't really see it, but in here it is now staked. The castle nut was not staked, nor was it installed properly. It was actually installed backwards. So day 2.5 of the class, this castle nut started to walk off on me and basically disconnected from the buttstock of the rifle, or from the receiver of the rifle. And Chris at Regular Guy Training was nice enough to help me stake it in place and attach it properly because I didn't bring the proper tools. So that was one issue that I ran into. The Ready Mag right here made reloads incredibly easy. And for anybody that hasn't used a Ready Mag before, there's a lever that's right here. Get this sling out of the way for you. There's a lever that's right here. You put your spare magazine in here, and your primary magazine goes in the gun. And when you eject the magazine from the gun, you can hit this lever, pull this mag, slide it in, hit your bolt release, and then you go home. That made reloads kind of a cheat code, and I didn't really have much of a problem all weekend with reloading, except for when my retro AR mags failed to lock the bolt open like they should, which is a problem with old magazines, as many people who use surplus crap will attest to.
Ha ha. Ha ha. Those are good. That fucking sucks.
On top of that, the rifle wasn't inaccurate. I was inaccurate. But that being said, this dot up top did not help. I think the highest score that I shot on the 200-point possible gauge all weekend was a 136. In using a modern flat-topped 416 11.5 style upper, I have shot a 155, which is 19 points higher than my score that I could get with this rifle after 3 days. With that 155 that I shot with the 416 style rifle, A, I had never shot an EOTech before. B, I had just zeroed said EOTech. 3, I have no option of attaching a Ready Mag to a 416 style firearm. And D, I hadn't practiced rifle shooting since I took this rifle out back in September, October of 2025. So to show a 19-point increase without training rifle for 9 months and then switching to a flat top style modern AR setup, it's pretty ridiculous, if you ask me. Sip the beverage here. What else did I learn about this style of rifle setup? The light is not exactly adequate, and I wouldn't bet my life on this rifle because of the 8-hour battery life of the Aimpoint 3000. Now, you can still use the irons with this style of mount, which is awesome. They are A1 style irons on this carbine setup. They are zeroed for 50 and 200 yards. So if you know your holdovers, everything's kosher. If you don't know your holdovers, you're going to have a bad time. Speaking of holdovers, getting into this dot. Height over bore exists. This is probably a 2.5 to 3 inch difference between the dot and the barrel. So when you are aiming at a target, if you are trying to shoot the head box on an IPSC target at 7 yards, you will be giving the target a hat that you will be shooting at. Otherwise, you will shoot the chest of the target. It is quite a difference in the holdovers. You don't have to worry about that so much with a modern flat-topped AR setup. Speaking of the charging handle, this gas buster here, I don't remember who makes it, but they call it the gas buster charging handle. There is such a thing as having too extended of a charging handle, because when you are trying to do one-handed stoppage clearances of a rifle such as this, my original thought was, oh, get the big charging handle I possibly can. That way I can, pin it on stuff or use it on the ground, whatever. Well, if it's on the ground and this charging handle is too extended and you are trying to drag it through the gravel, this extended lever on the bottom here will give you a bad time. Not exactly the most fun thing. I will say the MBT 2-stage trigger, it's fantastic. Fastest rifle I've shot so far, minus AKs with ALGs. Another consideration in these retro firearms is your stock choice. This is a regular CAR 15 stock. And I have not experienced this, but I have heard many an anecdote of mortaring said stock onto the dirt to clear a stoppage and having this stock just fuck right off into non-existence and be broken. That is not optimal for a defensive rifle setup. So if you are considering using a retro firearm for a defensive rifle or a duty rifle or what may have you, there are better options. You don't need to use something like this anymore. Does that mean that I don't like this? No. I love this rifle. This rifle will be with me till I die because my father gifted it to me. That being said, it is not the best piece of equipment on planet Earth, and you can do better, especially for what I had to pay for this rifle. Maybe even not myself, but my father paid. Base rifle itself as a pre-ban was 900 bones. My father paid that himself. It took me 2.5 to 3 years to source the Surefire 660 and the Aimpoint 3000. It took me a long time to find a ready mag. Everything else the rifle came with, this gas buster charging handle, was something like 84 Arizona Sweet Teas. So you can find those relatively easily. That being said, before I even started to use this rifle as a defensive rifle, we have to elaborate a little bit on why I chose this as a defensive rifle at the time that I used it. Before this, I had no real experience with AR-15s. I had a Mark 18 Mod 0-ish clone that I first got into shooting with rifles. 10-3 barrel. Couldn't tell you what parts. I think it was a Roscoe barrel with like an M-LOK handguard and a flat top with a SIG Romeo 5 or something like that on it. That rifle kind of sucked. So I ended up getting rid of it. But prior to this, I had no serious use with an AR-15. Depending on who you ask, I still have no serious use with an AR-15. I just have more experience with this now. But on the first range trip that I took this rifle out, I didn't have a YouTube channel at the time. And I didn't film my first experience with this rifle. But let me set the stage for you. No red dot on the rifle, no light on the rifle. I'm going to shoot my first 0 of the iron sights. I aim the sights on target. I pull the trigger. Now, you hear that. You hear the hammer go forward when I pull the trigger. That didn't happen that day. I had probably 1,000-ish dry fires with this firearm, with its original stock trigger before I took it to the range. The first day that I took it to the range, I loaded a magazine in this rifle, I charged it, I put the safety on, and I went on target. And when I pulled the trigger, nothing happened. Nothing happened. So I think to myself, that's weird. The trigger didn't actuate. And I flicked my safety on. I put my safety in the on position. And as soon as I flicked the safety on, the rifle fired. So I was pointed down range at target, pull the trigger, nothing happens, flip the safety on, boom, rifle goes off. I nearly pissed myself. That was a weird, scary experience. I take the rifle back to the sleep spot that I was staying at. I disassemble the rifle. I can't see anything wrong with the trigger or hammer, but all I can figure to myself is the springs are worn out. This thing has probably had a life since the 80s, and it's time to swap the trigger out. So I ended up going with a LaRue MBT. That being said, when buying pre-ban rifles, stuff might be worn out. I wasn't going to be surprised if before the end of this class, this barrel was shot out. That being said, the barrel has held strong and it's doing just fine. So I can't necessarily complain about it. But these are some things to think about when shooting a retro style AR-15. Stuff just might not work the way that you're used to. So don't spend your money on old stuff just because it's cool. Get yourself a legitimate rifle before you go down the rabbit hole of trying to do old school cool stuff. If you don't, and you stake your life on an old school rifle, you might be disappointed.